The very moment Amara Gardner, a young black woman with a puzzled smile and an old, battered gym bag, stepped into the Golden Dragon Karate Academy, the air seemed to tense as whispers and mocking laughter broke out. Tyler Evans and Josh Wilson, the two ringleaders of the dojo, immediately put on playful smirks, mimicking every awkward motion Amara made as she fumbled in the oversized GI, struggling to tie the white belt around her waist. Sensei Rick glanced at his watch, his expression a mix of impatience and skepticism, while Erica Matthews, the dojo manager, leaned in to whisper to Rick about worrying insurance complications for special cases like this. No one bothered to look closely into Amara's eyes, where a calm, steel-cold focus lay hidden, observing everything that went unnoticed. Nobody wondered why her mistakes repeated themselves with such a strangely methodical regularity. They simply saw what they wanted to see. A clumsy, out-of-place newcomer who clearly didn't know what she was doing. Little did they realize that this unassuming rookie was, in fact, the legendary Thunderhand, the last heir of a storied Japanese karate lineage. Each sneer and scrutinizing gaze unknowingly began to unravel the threads of a secret, and when everything came undone, they would face the truth. A true grandmaster had been hiding in plain sight among those who were quickest to belittle her. Late one sweltering Monday afternoon in suburban Atlanta, Amara Gardner stood before the glass door of the Golden Dragon Karate Academy. The low sun filtered through the trees, casting her petite silhouette onto the gleaming red sign adorned with a golden dragon. She gripped the faded strap of her gym bag and took a deep breath to steady her racing heart. The instant Amara pushed the door open, every eye in the training hall, from the row of benches to every corner of the wooden floor, turned toward her. Her skin was a smooth, deep brown, her hair neatly braided, and her borrowed karate uniform hung loosely, almost swallowing her slight frame. Her hands trembled as she wrestled with the white belt, awkward and unsure in its loose folds. Tyler Evans, the tallest boy in the class, shot a glance at his friends and snickered, "Hey, look over here. Didn't know this place had a preschool division." The group burst into laughter. Josh Wilson, his blonde hair in disarray, immediately mimicked Amara's bungled belt tying, his voice mocking, "Hey, do you tie it on the left or the right? Man, this is a mess." Laughter echoed all around the room. Sensei Rick Walker, a sturdy, salt-and-pepper-haired man in his mid-40s, observed from the front, suspicion knitting his brows as he watched the spectacle. He said nothing, readjusted his headband, and continued instructing the class. At the reception desk, Erica Matthews, a sharp-featured woman with her brown hair tucked into a high bun and a clipboard in hand, leaned closer to Rick. "Are you sure about this? Cases like this can cause major insurance headaches," she murmured. Rick shrugged and silently watched Amara a bit longer before offering no opinion. Under those critical stares, Amara allowed herself a small bow of her head and forced a timid smile, as if on instinctive defense. She approached the registration table and spoke in a quiet voice. "I'd like to join the beginner's class. If it's okay, I'll do my best." Amanda, the receptionist, hesitated for a moment, then handed Amara a form to fill out. Behind her, the whispers and laughter persisted. "Looks like free entertainment for the dojo today. Watch out or she'll trip over her own belt." Amara bit her lip and silently filled in every line on the registration form without a single slip. When she finished, she lifted her head, her eyes flashing a hint of resolve, though buried deep within remained confusion, hurt, and a silent vow to fight twice as hard just to survive here. The first class had not even begun, but Amara knew she had just walked into a nest of hornets, where she would not only have to learn martial arts, but also how to battle prejudice, mocking laughter, and the fear that lurked deep inside her own heart, The moment the bell rang to signal the start of the first class, Amara melted into the ranks of students like a small fish lost among sharks. The room, already stifling, seemed to tighten around her. Each hesitant step she took only gave Tyler and Josh more opportunity to flaunt their dominance. Sensei Rick called for everyone to warm up with the basic moves. The class sprang to life in unison, their strikes and blocks crisp and synchronized like a well-rehearsed choir. But Amara's breathing was off. Each punch and kick she threw was slow, wobbly, and out of rhythm, as if her body refused to obey. She tried to recall every move she'd watched online, but under the weight of so many eyes and the hum of derisive laughter, everything blurred in her mind. Tyler rolled his eyes and pretended to yawn. Oh my gosh, maybe she's here just to film a TikTok, living that follower life. Josh pounced on the opportunity, holding up his phone as if he were live streaming. Hey everyone, check out this lost soul trying karate. Mommy, save me from that kick. The students in the back burst into laughter, and even some of the older members cracked irritated smiles, unashamed in their contempt. Rick strode past Amara, pausing to straighten her posture with a stiff adjustment, muttering loud enough for her to hear. If you need to sit out, just say so. No one's forcing you to push yourself too hard. Those words, though kindly phrased on the surface, cut into Amara's pride. Rick's eyes had already said it all. He didn't trust her, didn't expect anything except that she'd give up. The exercise moved on to a combination of kicks, punches, and dodges. Amara tried to keep pace, but each time she spun, Josh deliberately lunged closer, pretending he'd been hit to get a rise out of everyone. Tyler pounded the heavy bag with a hard kick, eyes locked on Amara, as though to remind her this place wasn't for the weak. After yet another misstep, Amara was shoved out of line and nearly fell onto the mat. No one reached out to help. On the contrary, Tyler sneered. Let her sit this one out, Sensei. She probably doesn't even know left from right. Rick folded his arms and watched silently. Finally, he motioned for Amara to step off the floor and observe the rest of the class. She lowered her head, placed her hands neatly in front of her abdomen, and forced herself to stay calm. Before stepping away from the mat, Amara turned back and bowed to Rick, a deep, respectful bow, just as her father had taught her. Rick responded with a slight nod, his eyes still cold, betraying his disappointment. On the way home, Amara hurried through the lengthening shadows. The taunts seemed to echo with every footstep. When she got back to her small apartment, she collapsed onto the bed, her eyes stinging. A single tear rolled quietly down her cheek, but Amara only allowed herself one moment of weakness. Later that night, she quietly opened the old wooden box tucked under her bed. By the faint yellow lamplight, she placed the faded black belt on her bed first, then the old photos of her with her father, James Gardner, and with various Japanese masters. Underneath the photos, a simple inscription read, "Strength is born from adversity." Amara ran her hand over the worn edges of that belt and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will be different." And in the silence of that small room, only her silent determination shone brightly in the tear-dry eyes of Amara Gardner, the young woman embarking on a journey to overcome prejudice, pain, and her own deepest fears. That night, after a brief moment of vulnerability with her secret box, Amara sat back against the window of her rented room, the silvery moonlight casting a glow on her brown skin and making the large scar across her abdomen stand out even more. She lifted her shirt, gently tracing her fingers along the uneven ridge of the scar, the remnant of the battle years ago, an indelible memory from her childhood wandering in Japan. In that quiet light, fragments of the past flooded back as vividly as if it were yesterday. James Gardner, her late father, a former U.S. Marine stationed in Okinawa, with determined eyes and hands that always gently ruffled his daughter's hair. Beside him was Mizuki Tanaka, her mother, the only daughter of the legendary Grandmaster Tanaka, who broke tradition to teach karate to her own daughter. Amara had grown up between two worlds. On one side, America that refused to accept different skin, and on the other a traditional Japan that viewed half-bloods, and especially girls who practice martial arts, with disdain. Even as a child, the whispers in the streets of Tokyo still echoed in her mind. That mixed-blood girl will never be truly Japanese. A black girl and karate. Too far out of her league. From a young age, Amara had shown a rare talent. Every movement, every stanced form, every strike she executed was precise and powerful enough to win grudging approval from the strictest elders in the Tanaka family. But the more talented she was, the more she had to conceal it to spare her family trouble and avoid the prying eyes of both the martial arts community and outsiders. The price of being different was loneliness in every breath. When her father died in an accident, her mother, both frail and proud, took Amara back to America, leaving behind all their memories of Japan, along with one parting instruction. No matter where you go, there will always be people who want to drag you down, Amara. Don't let them decide your worth. But America wasn't any easier. At her old school, Amara remained the odd one out, neither fully American nor the Japanese girl she had once been in her mother's kitchen. Every place she went, every scrutinizing look built another protective shell, causing Amara to shrink further into her own world, quietly existing rather than daring to shine. Tonight, after days of humiliation at Golden Dragon, those old wounds stung anew. Still, Amara knew she couldn't hide forever. She placed the black belt on her pillow, pulled on a hoodie, and quietly slipped out of her apartment. The city at night was still. The small park was lit by only a few yellow lamps casting light onto dew-damp grass. Amara chose a shadowed corner beneath a large oak tree and melted into the darkness. She began to move, warming up slowly at first, then suddenly picking up pace, each traditional Japanese kata exploding in the silent space. Her feet spun swiftly, her hips moved fluidly, and her arms sliced through the air like flowing water and drifting clouds. Far from the awkward image she presented at the dojo, Amara now transformed into a true warrior. Her gaze was fierce, each breath deep and powerful, her every motion crisp, full of inner strength and an unspoken pride. Then, from a distance, a figure emerged, Mia Lee. The petite Asian-American girl, a new student, had already noticed something different about Amara in her gentle gestures and humble demeanor. Without thinking, Mia took out her phone and quietly filmed the entire performance. She held her breath, stunned to see Amara become a karate phantom right there in Atlanta's night. What Amara didn't know was that this video would become the spark for a series of upheavals to come, unearthing secrets, stirring old hatreds, and reigniting storms of a past that she thought had long been buried. The next morning, while dew still clung to the windows of the training hall, Amara quietly returned to Golden Dragon. The dojo felt just as stifling as it had the night before. Josh and Tyler were already there early, huddled in a corner of the mat, chatting about the latest TikTok video and sneering at Amara whenever she walked by. Same hostile looks, same cruel smirks and taunts, but this time, Amara did not bow her head or shrink away. After last night's practice in the park, she carried a new, silent strength within her. That day's lesson was basic kicking technique, a move that looks simple but is deceptively difficult. Even a slight shift in balance sends you careening. Sensei Rick demonstrated first, then paired everyone up. Mia Lee petite and still tentative from a lack of confidence, struggled to hold her stance. Each time she raised her leg, she wobbled, then glanced around awkwardly, earning a chorus of snickers from behind. Tyler curled his lip and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Look at this. Newbie teaching an even newer newbie. Must be a top-secret move." Josh adopted a mock announcer voice. "Welcome to Knockdown Kicks with Amara and Mia. Guaranteed you'll never stay standing." Those vicious laughs felt like blows to the self-esteem of both girls. But Amara didn't react as she had before. She calmly stepped beside Mia and lowered her voice so only Mia could hear. "Don't pay attention to them. When you kick, imagine your foot as roots digging deep into the ground. Power doesn't come from your calf. It comes from your breath and your mind." Mia looked up at Amara, surprised by that determined yet gentle gaze. Amara placed a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder and guided her foot placement, then smiled. "Try taking a deep breath. Hold your balance at your core, and then kick. You don't need to kick hard, just stay steady." Mia complied. Her first kick wobbled, but on the second try, with that small adjustment, her foot stayed solid. Mia's eyes widened in surprise. How do you know that feeling?" Mia asked. "I learned from my mother. Whenever I was scared, she told me to breathe deeply and focus inward so I could control what's happening outside." Tyler and Josh opened their mouths to continue mocking, but Mia's obvious improvement caught both of them off guard. Josh rolled his eyes. "You two can pat each other on the back all you want, but wait till we're in a real match. Let's see who helps then." Tyler let out a grudging laugh, but a flicker of hesitation appeared in his eyes, an instinct that something was changing in this dojo. Sensei Rick, standing at the front of the mat, silently observed everything. He recognized that Amara's advice to Mia wasn't mechanical or forced. It genuinely helped Mia focus and stabilize in a matter of minutes. In that moment, Rick began to wonder if he'd been too quick to judge the young woman who'd seemed so weak on the surface. After class, as everyone packed up, Mia gathered her things and then hurried after Amara outside. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Thank you for helping me. No one's ever cared about me like that before." Amara smiled, and for the first time in days, her eyes shone with real warmth. "I believe you can be stronger than anyone expects. Just don't give up when they laugh." The two girls walked side by side down the narrow path beside the dojo, leaving those mocking laughs behind them. It was the first seed of a friendship, of trust, and the spark for a chain of events that would soon transform the entire Golden Dragon Academy. That evening, after that brief, warm moment outside the dojo, Mia Lee still couldn't shake what she had witnessed. Back home, she pulled out her phone and replayed the secretly recorded park video over and over. Each kick, each movement Amara made in the darkness still held a mesmerizing power. Those techniques were completely at odds with the shy, clumsy image Amara showed in class. A burning curiosity compelled Mia to dig deeper. The next morning, she spent her entire lunch break in the school library, researching major karate tournaments. Suddenly, she came across a familiar name in a copy of A History of American Martial Arts, 20th Century. Before her eyes on that aged page was a black-and-white photograph. A young black female martial artist standing on the podium at a tournament in Japan, flanked by Japanese masters. Below the photo, a small caption read, "Amara Gardner, first African-American female to win the All-Japan Karate Youth Cup 2014. Mia froze. She compared the photo. That same gaze, that posture, and even the small scar on Amara's right arm in the picture matched exactly the scar Amara had accidentally revealed in the locker room. Reading on, Mia grew more bewildered as she discovered a string of impressive achievements, but there was absolutely no information about Amara's career after that year, as if she had vanished from the world's martial arts scene. That night, lying in bed, Mia reopened the video on her phone and compared each of Amara's kata movements with the techniques described in the book. Mia's eyes went wide when she realized every roundhouse kick, every spin, every stance was an advanced move, something only a highly experienced fighter could execute. Yet Amara had hidden it all, only revealing her true skill when she was alone, in stark contrast to the timid girl who had feared the mat in front of everyone else. Outside her room, the steady hum of passing cars continued, but inside, Mia's mind raged a storm of questions. Why would Amara pretend to be weak? Who was she really? What pain or fear had driven such a martial arts prodigy to bury her talent like this? Mia tossed and turned, her heart restless but tinged with excitement, as though she was on the verge of uncovering a great secret. Meanwhile, across town, Josh Wilson sat by his window, pretending to scroll through social media but actually preoccupied with thoughts of Amara more than he wanted to admit. At first, Josh had viewed her as just the new joke, someone for his group to mock at will. But the more he watched, the more he sensed something unusual. How Amara avoided strikes during even the lightest drills more adeptly than anyone else, and how her eyes sometimes flashed with a sharp awareness completely unlike the dazed look she wore on the surface. Josh wouldn't voice this aloud, nor would he dare admit it to Tyler or the others. But in his mind, those doubts quietly sprouted, bringing with them a vague unease. Perhaps this weak prey was not so simple after all. The atmosphere at Golden Dragon began to shift, silent questions growing larger, casting a shadow over every corner of the dojo, waiting for the day they would erupt into a wave that would wash away all prejudice. As days passed, the atmosphere at Golden Dragon grew increasingly tense. Ever since Amara began coaching Mia, the small acts of bullying had escalated into a full-blown campaign by Tyler and Josh, abetted by the indifference of some longtime students, and even Erica, the manager whose concerns always seemed more about the dojo's interests and image than its actual well-being. On Wednesday afternoon, just as the beginner class was starting their warm-up, Josh slipped into a corner of the room, offered to help Amara retie her belt, but secretly loosened the knot. "Careful, Amara. A loose belt is a sure way to trip," Josh sneered, then sauntered back to his spot. Meanwhile, Tyler waited by the doorway, discreetly scattering a thin layer of white chalk onto the floor before the rest of the class formed up, laying an invisible trap. During a basic drill, Amara was focused on her form when her foot suddenly slid out from under her, and she nearly fell flat on her face. Laughter erupted across the mat. "Hey, did anyone catch that on camera? Let's post it to our story tonight," Tyler shouted, openly reveling in his malice. Rick saw everything unfold, but only furrowed his brow slightly, torn between preserving the dojo's reputation and ensuring his students' safety. Erica stood near the door, cold eyes fixed on the scene, fingers scrolling her phone without any intention of intervening. At that moment, Mia sprang to her feet. She was no longer the small, hesitant girl everyone expected. Eyes blazing with fury, she shouted in a voice that carried across the entire training floor. "You should be ashamed of yourselves for showing no respect for others. This is a dojo, not your personal playground." The entire class froze. The laughter died immediately. Tyler stared in surprise, then snarled, "Backing your friend now, huh? What, you want to join the weakling club?" Josh crossed his arms and chimed in. "Yeah, Mia, go stand with her and see who's left with us." Instantly, the dojo split into two clear factions. Tyler, Josh, and their old crew on one side, while Erica, observing silently, looked pleased that the veteran students remained loyal. On the other side stood Mia, a handful of newer students, and a few neutrals who now regarded Amara with sympathetic eyes. In that high-tension moment, Amara bowed her head quietly, fingers clutching her silver-edged belt, her eyes reflecting that familiar steel of resolve. But this time, she was not alone. Mia stood right beside her, unflinching. The air in the dojo seemed to come to a standstill. Tyler stepped forward, his face inches from Amara's, and hissed with venom. "We make the rules here. Don't you dare dream of changing your fate, princess." Erica leaned over to Rick and whispered, "If Amara causes any more trouble, I'll recommend kicking her out of the beginner class." Just as tensions were about to boil over, a tall, elderly figure appeared quietly at the far end of the dojo. He wore a flawlessly tailored gray suit. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his presence was calm, yet exuded an authority that was hard to describe. Rick, flustered, hurried over and said, "Hello, sir. How may I help you?" The man offered a gentle smile and bowed in the traditional Japanese manner. "I simply wish to observe the class. My name is Kenji Tanaka." That name made Erica's eyes widen, and Amara froze, clutching her belt even tighter. No one knew that Kenji Tanaka was not only a legendary master of Japanese martial arts, but also the former teacher of Amara's mother, and the keeper of many untold secrets of the Gardner Tanaka family line. Under Kenji's discerning gaze, every action and expression from both sides in the dojo was silently judged, and nobody realized that his appearance would soon spark the next firestorm ready to erupt at Golden Dragon. The atmosphere at Golden Dragon grew heavier with each passing day. Ever since Amara began helping Mia, the small acts of bullying had escalated into an open campaign by Tyler and Josh, ignored by some of the senior students and even by Erica, the manager, who always seemed more concerned about the dojo's image and bottom line than the well-being of its students. By Wednesday afternoon, as the beginner class was just starting its warm-up, Josh seized the moment to slip behind Amara, helping her re-tie her belt, but he secretly loosened the knot instead. "Careful there, Amara. A loose belt makes it way too easy to trip." Josh sneered before slipping back to his position. Meanwhile, Tyler was already waiting at the doorway. Before class filed in, he secretly sprinkled a fine layer of white chalk across the center of the mat, creating an invisible trap. During the basic kicking drill, Amara was fully focused when suddenly her foot slid hard on the chalked spot, and she nearly fell flat on her face. Laughter erupted again. "Did anyone get that on video? Put it in tonight's story," Tyler shouted, not even bothering to hide his malice. Rick saw it all too, but only furrowed his brow, as if torn between protecting the dojo's reputation and ensuring his students' safety. Erica stood nearby, her expression icy, scrolling through her phone with no intention of intervening. At that moment, Mia suddenly stood up. She was no longer the small, timid girl she usually appeared to be. Her eyes blazed with fury as she yelled across the floor, "You all should be ashamed for disrespecting someone. This is a dojo, not your personal playground." The entire class froze. The laughter died on the spot. Tyler's expression faltered for a moment before he snarled, "Oh, defending your buddy, are you? Maybe you want to join the Weaklings Club?" Josh crossed his arms and chimed in, "Go ahead and pick a side, Mia. That'll show everyone who sticks around this crew." In an instant, the dojo split into two clear camps. Tyler, Josh, and their old gang on one side, Erica silently observing, looking satisfied that her veteran students remained loyal, and on the other side were Mia, a few newer students, and some neutrals who began regarding Amara with sympathy. In that tense moment, Amara bowed her head quietly, her hands tightening around her belt, her eyes reflecting that familiar determination, but this time she was no longer alone in the shadows. Mia stood right beside her, unwavering. The entire dojo seemed to pause. Tyler stepped forward, lowering his head until he was almost nose to nose with Amara, his tone venomous. "Here, we make the rules. Don't even think about dreaming of more, princess." Erica leaned close to Rick and whispered, "If Amara causes more trouble, I'll recommend removing her from the beginner class." While everyone's gaze remained locked in that silent struggle, an older man quietly appeared at the far end of the dojo. He wore a crisp gray suit, his silver hair neatly combed, and carried himself with a calm yet imposing presence. Rick, taken aback, quickly greeted him. "Hello, sir. How can I help you?" The man smiled gently and bowed with the courtesy of a Japanese teacher. "I just want to observe the class. My name is Kenji Tanaka." Erica startled at the name. Amara froze, her hand instinctively tightening its grip on the worn belt. No one knew that Kenji Tanaka was not only a Japanese martial arts legend, but also Amara's mother's former instructor, and the keeper of many untold secrets of the Gardner Tanaka lineage. Under Kenji's watchful gaze, every action and expression in the dojo went under silent judgment, and no one realized that his presence would ignite the next firestorm, one that would soon sweep through Golden Dragon and consume every prejudice, hidden agenda, and complacency that lingered there. Early on Challenge Day, the Golden Dragon dojo was packed. Parents, the press, students from all classes, and even the advertising partners Erica had specifically invited gathered around the training floor, their eyes fixed on the large mat in the center of the dojo. The atmosphere was both tense and electric, as if everyone was waiting for a show whose ending was already decided. Erica stepped forward, microphone in hand, plastering on a fake smile. To begin, Amara Gardner, our newest student, will perform a kata routine, then face off against Sensei Rick Walker. This is the true spirit of martial arts, courageously facing a challenge. Amara walked to the center of the mat, her hair tied neatly back, wearing her threadbare uniform, her eyes shining with a deep, unexplainable calm. Rick stood at the edge of the mat, arms crossed, his expression a mix of skepticism and anticipation for the moment this charade would end. Amara bowed her head and took a deep breath. The first few beats of her kata were slow and carried an air of awkwardness, exactly what everyone was used to seeing in practice, her steps slightly off, her strikes lacking power. The audience murmured quietly, and Tyler, Josh, and the senior students exchanged disgusted smirks. Erica stood in the corner, live-streaming with a satisfied grin, convinced that this public humiliation was unfolding on cue. But then, after just 3 breaths, Amara changed. Her eyes closed halfway, then snapped open, icy and focused. Her movements accelerated, the strikes and blocks were as sharp as a blade. Suddenly, the entire dojo fell silent. Her spins, her sweeps, her high kicks. Every traditional Japanese footwork pattern came alive on her lithe frame, and each cut through the air felt like an explosion. Rick, standing at the edge of the mat, widened his eyes. Parents began applauding in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the rapid transformation. Josh froze, mouth agape. Tyler's face went pale, shock flashing in his eyes, an emotion he'd never experienced in this dojo before. Amara finished her kata with an impeccably low stance and a powerful ki that echoed throughout the hall. The dojo stayed dead silent for a heartbeat, and then erupted into thunderous applause. Some even stood to cheer, but the climax wasn't over. Sensei Rick stepped onto the mat, hiding his unease behind a calm demeanor. "Amara, are you ready for the sparring portion?" "I'm ready, Sensei." Both bowed to each other and assumed fighting stances. Every eye held its breath. Rick struck first, launching an attack like a bolt of lightning. But Amara merely shifted her body a half step to the side, evading cleanly before returning a perfectly executed traditional block, soft yet precise. Rick pressed the attack, this time combining a side kick with an elbow strike, but Amara moved like water, lowering her center of gravity and using his own force to throw Rick off balance, sending him stumbling backward in total surprise. Applause broke out again, but this time it wasn't polite or perfunctory. It was genuine amazement at a skill level far beyond anyone's expectations. Rick, sweating through his composure, tried to salvage his pride, but every subsequent attack he launched Amara neutralized effortlessly. No flourish, no showmanship, just the calm poise of a warrior who had truly seen combat. As the cheers grew louder, Kenji Tanaka, the elder Japanese master, suddenly stepped onto the mat. His eyes glittered with pride as he spoke in both Japanese and English, his voice resonating throughout the dojo. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the performance of Amara Gardner, Thunderhand, the sole heir of the Tanaka lineage here in America, the inheritor of the essence of Japanese martial arts, and a pride to both nations." The entire dojo erupted. Parents stared in stunned disbelief. The younger students buzzed excitedly. Josh couldn't form a word. Tyler's face turned crimson. He felt embarrassed and insignificant for the first time in his life. Erica froze in place, her hand shaking around her phone, every plan to disgrace Amara dissolving into thin air in a matter of minutes. And amid all those astonished gazes, Amara quietly bowed, smiling a gentle, proud smile that shattered every prejudice with the simple truth of who she was. In just one night, the atmosphere at Golden Dragon changed dramatically. The video of Amara performing that stunning kata and sparring with Sensei Rick, quietly recorded by Mia and then accidentally going viral, became an internet sensation. Local news outlets, major martial arts channels, and international forums all picked it up, dubbing her with new titles: Atlanta's Thunderhand, the Tanaka heir, the warrior woman who shatters all preconceptions. A flood of new students and their parents descended on the dojo in droves, all hoping to register. Those same students who had previously given Amara the cold shoulder now lined up to take photos and shake her hand. Some rival dojos even extended invitations to train together or to have her teach special classes. Golden Dragon instantly became the center of attention. Erica hustled back and forth, meeting with reporters and flaunting herself as the mastermind behind this success, but inside she was panicking. She ran the numbers in her head, worried that if Amara overshadowed the modern dojo image she had meticulously built, Erica's advertising deals and brand partnerships would be at risk. Late that night, in her small office, Erica quietly logged into the management system. She searched for Amara's profile, intending to quietly remove her from the official roster on the pretext of safety and insurance concerns. But every time her mouse hovered over the delete button, Erica hesitated as she scrolled through hundreds of glowing comments under the viral videos. "Thanks to Golden Dragon, the Tanaka heir has finally appeared. My daughter is begging me to sign her up for Amara Gardner's class." At the same time, across the room in the dojo, Rick sat alone on the bench, lost in thought. Since the day Golden Dragon opened, he had never witnessed a moment like Challenge Day. A student who had been openly mocked by the entire community reversing her fate and teaching her own sensei a lesson. Rick wondered whether, over the years, he had truly been teaching the spirit of Budo, or if he had merely maintained a superficial form of instruction to keep the business afloat and to appease partners and parents. Under the dim lights, Kenji Tanaka approached and placed an old leather-bound notebook into Rick's hands. Budo isn't just about winning on the mat, Rick-san. It's how you face yourself, even when the truth brings you pain. Rick accepted it quietly, bowing his head in thanks. Deep down, he knew he needed to start over, learning the true spirit all over again from the very person he had once doubted. But as her fame reached its peak, a shadow began to creep in. One late weekend night, while Amara was practicing breathing exercises in the nearly empty park, a Japanese man stepped out from under the edge of a tree. His face was cold, in his early 30s, his posture impeccable, but his eyes filled with hatred. "Gardner-san," he said in perfect English, "I am Hiroshi Kojima, son of Kojiro Kojima. My father was once your family's rival, and his victim. I have come to settle the debt our generations owe each other." Without another word, Amara understood. The ghost of the past had truly returned. Hiroshi held out a card sealed with a red wax emblem from an underground Japanese martial arts council. The challenge, clearly written, "A duel for honor between the Tanaka heir and the house of Kojima. If you refuse, this will not end here." The rumor spread by morning, sending shockwaves through the martial arts world. Golden Dragon students felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Tyler, Josh, and their old guard felt restless and uneasy, wondering if Amara was merely a fleeting flash of brilliance or the spark of a tornado that was about to sweep away all outdated rules. In this whirlwind of fame, threats, and covert struggles, Amara had to face not only external opponents, but also the darkness within her own heart, where honor, courage, and long-buried pain were stirring more powerfully than ever. The news of the challenge match against Hiroshi Kojima spread throughout Atlanta's martial arts community, thrusting Golden Dragon into the eye of a heated debate. Pride fermented into division as old cracks were pried open, exposing grievances no one had dared speak aloud until now. Erica, having failed to remove Amara's name, feared the image of her modern, friendly, high-achieving dojo would collapse. She called a private meeting with the senior students and Tyler. In a cold voice, she declared, "Golden Dragon built its reputation on real achievement, not on some internet sensation. Anyone who sides with Amara, who sides with outdated tradition, has already disqualified themselves from this dojo." Tyler, once arrogant and the ringleader of the bullying, became Erica's eager enforcer. He urged the old-timers to boycott Amara, even creating a separate group chat to protect the dojo's honor, attacking the new students without mercy. "Are you here to learn martial arts or to put on a TikTok show? Keep supporting Amara and don't blame us when nobody's left to guide you." Meanwhile, those who supported Amara kept growing in number. Mia, the first to publicly back her, gathered the new students, including those who had stayed silent out of fear. Josh, after Challenge Day, became a particularly surprising element. He openly rejected the dojo's old rules and joined the ranks defending the true spirit of martial arts, even though he had once mocked Amara. The internal conflict escalated when Josh suddenly took a week off from training. In reality, he spent that time facing his father, Alan Wilson, a notorious former MMA fighter with a win-at-any-cost mentality. Late one evening in their cramped living room, Josh sat frozen as Alan berated him. I taught you martial arts so you could win, not lose to some girl putting on a show. If you want to be a champion, you have to fight, knock out your opponent." But this time, Josh did not remain silent. He looked his father in the eye with a calm resolve and said, "I've realized that if I must become cruel and callous just to win, that victory means nothing. Amara showed me how to be strong without being heartless." Determined, Josh met Amara at the park the next morning. Without grand apologies or flowery words, he quietly said, "I want to learn how to use real strength. I don't want to be a broken version of my dad." Amara simply nodded and led Josh through secret pre-dawn training sessions. Breathing exercises, feeling the body's natural movement, strengthening the mind before the strikes. Josh began to change. He grew composed and fluid, learning to use his opponent's force against them, to control the match with calmness, instead of charging in like a half-rookie MMA fighter. Meanwhile, rumors of Erica's doping scandals, fraudulent achievements, and alleged referee bribery started to leak. Tyler, infamously aggressive but always hungry for titles, was discovered using performance enhancers in a tournament. At first, he covered it up and denied everything, but when Rick, after a period of self-reflection, confronted him and urged him to tell the truth to save the dojo, Tyler was forced to confess. The fallout didn't stop there. Several female students came forward, recounting how Erica coerced them into competing under false names, misrepresenting their ages, and even fixing match outcomes to collect more medals. Under pressure from parents and the online community, which was closely following Amara, more students found the courage to speak up and filed a collective complaint with the Georgia State Karate Association. Enraged, Erica lashed out, "Don't forget who put you in this position. Without me, Golden Dragon would have no medals, no sponsorship deals. Nobody would know this dojo exists." But by that point, the wave of resistance had reached its peak. Mia, Josh, many other students, and finally Rick, who had rid himself of his personal biases, spoke out in unison. A dojo cannot exist on trophies alone. It exists on honesty, respect, and the spirit of martial arts. Glory, built on deception, will collapse sooner or later. Golden Dragon split down the middle. One side clinging to a glamorous but hollow past, the other championing reform, with Amara as the emblem of a genuine martial arts revival. Amid that crisis, the Georgia State Karate Council demanded a thorough inspection of the dojo. The final masks were poised to fall, signaling a seismic shift that would sweep away outdated rules and pave the way for a new generation, where true strength is built on courage, not on fear and deceit. Finally, the day of the state tournament arrived. The atmosphere in the sports center felt almost suffocating with anticipation, as thousands of spectators, media representatives, major dojo delegates, and international journalists gathered. They weren't just here for the competition. They came for the fevered buzz around Amara Gardner, Thunderhand, the young woman who had kept America's martial arts community talking for weeks. Backstage, Amara tightened the faded black belt, her father's keepsake. Mia, Josh, Rick, and even Kenji Tanaka stood beside her, their eyes a mix of worry and encouragement. Outside, the crowd roared her name, but her heart felt heavy. Deep down, she knew this was more than just a match. It was the final confrontation in a 50-year feud between two families, two philosophies, two worlds. When the honor match was announced, every gaze locked onto the center of the ring. Hiroshi Kojima, carrying the weight of his family's hatred, strode in with the determined bearing of an Eastern warrior. His lean, muscular frame was clad in a black gi, emblazoned with his clan's crest. He bowed coldly. "It's time to repay my family's suffering, Gardner." The arena seemed to freeze. Amara stepped forward and bowed solemnly, her eyes showing only absolute focus. No fear at all. The battle began. Hiroshi immediately launched a relentless barrage, blending modern techniques with traditional strikes, showing no mercy. His intent was clear, to crush Amara quickly and painfully, forcing her to pay for what his father, Kojiro Kojima, had once lost. High kicks, spinning punches, and knee and elbow strikes came fast and furious, the impact echoing through the arena. Organizers, coaches, and judges watched every breath, and fans who had come expecting a pretty performance were now swept into the vortex of historic vengeance. Amara did not flinch or adopt a purely defensive stance. She fluidly avoided his strikes, using Hiroshi's own force to redirect him, sidestepping, parrying, and returning precise but controlled counters. Every technique her father and Kenji had taught her, the very essence of the Tanaka line, she applied calmly. When power becomes rage, only stillness can guide the spirit. Then, midway through the second round, Hiroshi's roundhouse kick landed squarely on Amara's old scar. Pain shot through her like the knife from years ago, and she paused for a heartbeat. The entire arena gasped. Tyler clenched his fists, Josh sprang to his feet, and Mia cried out in fear. Sensing her momentary weakness, Hiroshi pounced like a wounded beast, pouring all his fury into a flurry of blows. His eyes burned not only with hatred, but also with desperate sorrow. A lifetime of loss, his father's expectations, a darkness passed down through generations weighing on his shoulders. Amara, sweat and blood mingling on her skin, did not back down. She closed her eyes and recalled her father's memory. Then Kenji's voice. Only compassion can untangle 50 years of hatred. Defeating an enemy is easy. Freeing them from that hatred is far harder. Steadying her breath, Amara met Hiroshi's final strike with a signature Tanaka lock, soft, fluid, using his own momentum to seize control. In an instant, she glided in close, evading every blow, then unexpectedly placed her open palm against his chest, over his heart. The arena went silent. With one more motion, she could have delivered a lethal strike. Yet Amara remained still, her gaze serene as her palm pressed against Hiroshi's heart. I choose to end this hatred, not to kill it, she whispered, loud enough for the whole arena to hear. Hiroshi froze. Shock and disbelief washed over him, all his strength drained away. In that single, gentle, authoritative act, and with compassionate grace, the 50-year storm of hatred dissolved. The stands erupted in thunderous applause and tears. Rick rose to his feet and bowed to Amara. Kenji smiled with moist eyes. Tyler, Josh, and Mia all stood in awe, finally understanding that true strength lies not in violence, but in compassion and self-control. In that moment, before thousands of witnesses, the last vestige of hatred was undone, by the hand of a young woman bearing a great martial arts legacy and an unwavering, courageous heart. The moment Amara's hand gently touched her opponent's chest, the ring seemed to fall into a heavy silence that stretched for several long seconds. The cheers choked off, giving way to a wave of emotion that rippled through the entire arena. In the center of everyone's attention, Hiroshi Kojima suddenly collapsed to his knees. Not because he had been physically defeated, but because the weight of his soul had just been released from the bonds of hatred. Breathing ragged, still wide-eyed, Hiroshi whispered, not just to Amara, but as if speaking to himself, to the past, to his father far away. I've lived with hatred for too long, so long that I forgot the true purpose of martial arts. I've only been a shadow of the past, blindly following my father's curse. On the mat, Amara bowed and gently placed her hand on Hiroshi's shoulder. There was no longer any distance between victor and vanquished, only two hearts that had just endured the most important battle of their lives, a battle against the darkness inside. Your true journey starts today, not at the end of a final match. Forgive your father, forgive yourself, and learn to use strength to protect instead of destroy. That is the greatest legacy. The crowd sat in stunned silence, then slowly rose to their feet. An outpouring of emotion swept through everyone, from the students and parents to the visiting fighters. Sensei Rick stood, bowing deeply to Amara for the first time, showing absolute respect that transcended any prejudice of age, skin color, or gender. Kenji Tanaka, his silver hair shimmering, tears glinting in his eyes, stepped into the light and clasped his former student's hand, as if to pass on the will of countless martial arts generations. In one corner of the stands, Erica, who had once only cared about power and personal gain, felt utterly out of place. The power she had believed in, fame and money, suddenly seemed so small in the face of a lesson in compassion and courage from those she had always doubted. From their seats, Tyler looked at Josh, and Mia turned to the newer students, all moved to realize the greatest victory for a martial artist is not defeating an opponent, nor is it a trophy on display. It is conquering oneself, rising above every grudge and every narrow bit of ego. Amid a sea of camera flashes, the press jostled to capture every moment. Yet it was the shared stillness and that unanimous bow that became the symbol of a historic moment. For the first time, a young black woman had shattered a half-century of hatred, turning an enemy into a companion on a new martial arts journey. After the ceremony, Hiroshi sought out Amara in the resting room. His face was no longer cold, his eyes were determined yet gentle. I want to start over, to be myself, not my father's shadow. If you will have me, I wish to stay at Golden Dragon, to learn how to master strength and forgiveness, just as you have. Amara smiled and extended her hand. This door is always open to anyone brave enough to change, to rise above the past and become a better person. From that day on, the dojo pulsed with new life. Rick climbed onto the podium and proclaimed solemnly, "Beginning today, Golden Dragon will not be a dojo defined by medal counts alone. It will be a place where everyone, regardless of skin color, gender, age, or background, has the right to be strong, to make mistakes, to rise again, and to be forgiven." In Atlanta's sunset glow, on the old wooden floor, the Gardner and Kojima families, 2 generations once bound by blood, tears, and hatred, now stood shoulder to shoulder in a simple breathing exercise. Thus began the true journey of martial arts anew. After the deeply humane victory and the public resolution of old hatred before thousands of spectators, Golden Dragon Karate Academy entered a period of stormy transformation, not only within the broader martial arts community but also within its own walls. Erica's schemes, her fraud and manipulation, broke open in headlines. The State Karate Commission launched an official investigation, and many parents who had once been Erica's biggest supporters now turned against her, demanding fair treatment for their children. Sensei Rick, torn between old values and new, faced the greatest crossroads of his life. He decided to buy out Erica's entire share. Erica was ordered by the commission to leave the dojo. No longer content as the old school manager, Rick made a decisive change. He voluntarily returned to wearing a white belt, starting again from the beginning under Amara's guidance. On the day of the dojo's renaming, a new sign went up amid enthusiastic applause. Gardner Tanaka Karate Academy. Rick climbed onto the podium and bowed respectfully to Amara. The most important thing I've learned from you isn't flashy techniques. It's humility, solidarity, compassion, and the courage to admit my own limitations. I want to be your very first student on this new journey." A traditional ceremony followed in solemn formality. Rick donned a clean white gi, tied on a fresh white belt, and stood alongside the younger students as a living example that it's never too late to begin again, to grow, to learn. The dojo's atmosphere transformed overnight. There were no more mocking laughs, no longer an obsession with results above all else. Instead, there was sharing and mutual support. Amara's presence breathed fresh life into every corner of the training hall. Tyler, who had once led the bullying, after facing repeated failures and missteps, approached Amara hesitantly. "I've hurt so many people. Is there any way I can make amends?" Amara looked at him kindly. True strength begins with regret, and with the courage to stand up for what's right. From that day forward, Tyler, Josh, and Mia became the trio that built a brand new class, one for children who had been bullied, kids who were fearful, insecure, or coming from difficult circumstances. They didn't start by teaching kicks, punches, or kata. Instead, their first lesson was deep: breathing exercises, mindful meditation, and sharing stories about their past fears. Josh led sessions on how to channel anger, and Tyler spoke candidly about his own history of bullying, showing those kids that even someone who once did wrong can change. Mia, who had once been the timid one, became an inspiration to shy young girls, teaching them emotional control and how not to surrender to tears or the taunts of others. This class became a safe space, where everyone was heard, allowed to make mistakes, and permitted to learn and grow together. The outdoor sessions in the park, led by Amara, became the dojo's new signature program. These gatherings focused on the roots of true martial arts spirit: breathing exercises, balance drills, dynamic and still meditation. Adults, children, former students who had left Golden Dragon, and even parents flocked to participate. There was no longer a divide between white belts and black belts, only people on the same path, learning together, sharing together, healing the wounds of the past together. The transformation at Gardner Tanaka Academy didn't remain confined within the dojo's walls. It rippled outward through Atlanta's neighborhoods, becoming a new phenomenon in humanistic education and community healing. In the first days after the renaming, former students, some who had bullied others, some who had made mistakes, hesitantly walked into class, only to be met not with ostracism or ridicule, but with understanding glances and gentle encouragement from Amara and the assistant instructors. Mistakes are not permanent stains, they are lessons, starting points for growth. Tyler, once the king of bullies, now serves as the youth class assistant. He doesn't hesitate to apologize directly to every student he once hurt, and even becomes the first to stand up for new students against any lingering skepticism. His actions have inspired those still burdened by guilt to face their past and give themselves a second chance. In every class, Amara doesn't open with strikes or forms. Instead, she begins with deep breathing exercises, meditation, and stories about fear, self-worth, and the value of soft power. She encourages each student to share their own vulnerabilities, and together, the class works to overcome them. No one is mocked for awkwardness or shyness. Everyone has the right to be taught, to be heard, and to be protected. Gradually, the dojo becomes a haven for many. Children who were bullied at school, young girls of color lacking confidence, students who once hid their tears in the shadows, as well as adults carrying the weight of past failures, single mothers, immigrants who do not speak English. All are welcomed and find their place. Josh, who once hurt others to please his father, now enthusiastically leads emotional control through karate sessions, helping kids understand that true strength isn't in muscles or loud yells, but in remaining calm and mastering oneself. Mia becomes a symbol of courage and empathy, guiding young girls to build self-respect, learn to say no, love themselves, and help each other overcome past pain. The learning environment at Gardner Tanaka Academy brims with diversity, ethnicity, age, gender, background, but all differences dissolve into a spirit of respect and mutual support. Here, no one asks where you come from or measures your skills or achievements. What matters is how you will become a better version of yourself. The values of soft power, inner strength, and emotional intelligence gradually become each student's guiding philosophy. Belt promotion ceremonies take the form of a circle of gratitude. Every student who earns a new belt must share one thing they once feared or were weak at, and how, with the dojo's help, they overcame it. Tears, smiles, and heartfelt embraces merge into a powerful, unprecedented bond, something rarely seen in any martial arts school before. On rainy Atlanta days, students still come quietly to the dojo, sitting together to share their stories, struggles, and practice breathing and meditation. The small classes led personally by Amara become a refuge for wounded souls, where everyone has the right to dream of a stronger tomorrow. Under the guidance of Amara, once underestimated and hiding in the shadows, Gardner Tanaka Academy has become a launching pad for the entire vulnerable community. The greatest values of the martial arts path, from compassion and inner strength to unity and forgiveness, are now etched into every story, every life, every gentle breath on the old wooden floor. One early summer afternoon, as Atlanta's sunlight filtered through each window pane of the new dojo, Gardner Tanaka Academy glowed in a soft golden hue. The training hall buzzed with laughter, even breathing rhythms, and children's voices echoing throughout the space. Amara stood in the center of a circle formed by her young students, many of whom had once been victims of bullying, felt out of place, or had even been teased by Tyler or Josh back in the day. Now, they were all teammates and close training partners. After a guided connection meditation, a small black girl with bright, timid eyes raised her hand and asked, "Sensei Amara, how can I be as strong as you?" The entire class fell quiet, waiting for the answer. Amara smiled, her expression gentle yet resolute, both teacher and big sister in one. The most important strength isn't in a punch, nor is it in a belt or a trophy. The greatest power lives in your heart, in the ability to forgive, in the determination to rise after failure, and in the courage to stand up for what's right, even if it means going against the crowd. When you conquer your own fear, your own self-doubt, your own resentment, you become the strongest one of all. Tyler, now the youth class assistant, stood at the back, nodding quietly, his eyes devoid of the arrogance he once wore as a bully. Josh and Mia exchanged smiles, the old wounds now serving as inspiration to pass along kindness to their younger classmates. Even Rick, who had once been the instructor but was now Amara's student, watched in quiet pride, seeing his dojo truly reborn. Amara stepped into the center of the room and signaled for everyone to form a complete circle. Her voice rang out, warm and compelling. "Breathe, center, begin. Close your eyes, draw in a deep breath, find that stillness at your core, and then start everything from there." The sound of synchronized inhalations and exhalations filled the air, dissolving any barrier of past pain or division. Sunbeams streamed through the windows, spotlighting the training mats with ribbons of light, symbols of hope, like new life sprouting from the very place that had once been an anthill of prejudice and injustice. A peaceful calm pervaded the dojo. Kenji Tanaka, now elderly but still exuding dignity, sat by a window, his eyes shining with contentment. Hiroshi, former enemy, now colleague, stood by the mats, quietly guiding the older students and melding tradition with modern practice. Values once forgotten, compassion, respect, inner strength, and refusing to abandon anyone, had become the new DNA of Gardner Tanaka Academy, spreading through the entire neighborhood and making the dojo a safe home for all. When the session ended, the children poured out into the courtyard, their laughter bright and carefree, as if erasing every mark of the past. Amara lingered by the window, watching the late afternoon sun trace her shadow across the old wooden floor, merging with the silhouettes of these new generations. In that light, she realized, the greatest victory doesn't come from defeating someone else, but from igniting belief, courage, and a desire to live honorably in each of these young hearts. And when night fell outside the dojo, the final question, also the immortal message of this journey, echoed in everyone's mind. Will you fight for your own pride, or will you fight to inspire and change someone else's life? Amara's journey had come full circle, but its legacy, the power to spark hope, to foster confidence, and to stand firm, would endure, reaching across generations and lighting the path for anyone brave enough to begin again from the heart. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like and share it with friends for reflection, and subscribe so you never miss another inspiring journey of resilience, belief, and the extraordinary people who motivate us every day.